Oh, 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 go grab your bat. It's the queen of stats, KT Sharp. Is that the intro song?
That's it.
It should be.
Welcome to Sharp Steps, episode 495, the last week of the Yankees regular season here in 2020. Katie Sharp, the queen of stats, joins us as always to make us that much smarter of Yankee fans. Jake, how are you doing? I'll start with you before we get to the guest of honor. Co-host of honor.
Wow. Yeah, well.
Quick, be brief, Jake.
Blew it.
Katie, how are you doing?
Oh, all right. I'm just going to take over right now. I'm doing good. Like you guys said, it is crazy to think that when people are listening to this, we'll have one more series left in the regular season. And then it's off to the playoffs. It's madness. Obviously you just kind of feel like the season started, but now obviously it's over. And then also like just the fact that there are so many other sports being played now at the same time is just madness. I mean, you guys know I'm just a huge sports fan, kind of try and watch as many as possible. And it's really crazy right now to think a couple months ago we were, drowning in Netflix and whatnot. And now we just can't get enough sports. So I'm ready though. I'm ready for the playoffs. I'm definitely ready for the playoffs.
Are you nervous at all? Are you nervous about the Yanks losing the opening 3-game set?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not be nervous? I mean, it's a 3-game series. Anything can happen. I mean, we've seen this team we've seen be, the number one team in baseball, and we've seen them be probably like one of the worst teams in baseball. That's just the way it's been this season for the Yankees, but also for a lot of other teams. We've talked about that before. And but yeah, I mean, you can't be confident, I think, in anything right now. I think maybe the Dodgers are the only team that can kind of feel like, hey, we got a good shot. But I mean, what if they have to play the Reds in the first round, in that wild card round? You got Trevor Bauer, Luis Castillo in there. That's 2 games and you're done. So.
Never mind stud pitcher Sonny Gray. We won't talk about him. Katie, almost on the same thought, but flipping the coin over. The Dodgers feel great, and they probably have the scariest. The 3-game set will be the scariest for them because it can all be for naught. And yeah, it's just so many weird emotions because this season has been so draining in a way. And then it's also this weird parallel of like, wait, we normally do 100+ more of these in the regular season. So I don't know. It's a lot of weird emotions. The seasons are starting to change in the Northeast, and it's I don't know. I'm not gonna feel that pit in the stomach until Game 1 if the Yankees were to go down. If the Yankees were to go down again on cold day, I would be I'd be dark.
That's fantastic.
Wow, you're putting yourself out there.
3 games. I got 3, and we paid that guy a lot of shekels to go do it. So
I can get a pit in my stomach as soon as I think about that. A 3-game series is crazy. And the bats haven't beat a good pitcher yet, which was the main thing I wanted to ask you about, Katie, when you said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to hear about how the Yankees have done against good pitching this season. But first, let's do a little update on the pitching because we talked about that last episode and some more things have transpired. So what do we got on the Yankees pitching to kind of, put the cap on the end of that discussion?
Yeah, so just kind of an update from what we talked about last week, if you guys remember. With the new playoff format, obviously pitching depth comes into play a lot more. So we looked at how the Yankees stacked up in terms of teams with starters that had a 110 ERA plus or better. So that's the adjusted ERA metric, where 100 is league average, and obviously anything above it is better than league average. So slightly, a little bit better than league average starters. And at the time we talked last week, the Yankees did have 4. Unfortunately, our godson, Davey, is not at 110 ERA plus right now. And he probably, even with one more start, will not be able to get there unless he kind of shoves it and does like, I think it's 8 or 9, or he has to do like 7 or 8 shutout innings maybe to get there. So there are 3 for the Yankees, those types of starters. Unfortunately, that does not stack up well with the potential playoff teams here. We're going to kind of limit it to just talking about the Twins and the White Sox today. Those looks like the 2 most likely teams that will be playing. The Twins have 4 of those starters, and one actually, our best friend, Randy Dobnak, is right below that at 108. So Twins are essentially 4 or 5. The White Sox have 4 solid guys in that range as well. So in a 3-game series, you probably only need, you need 3 at least. But having that 4th, I think, definitely gives them the advantage, because in that 3rd game, it's going to be all hands on deck. And if you need to have like 2 piggyback starters, that's where the Yankees will come up short. We'll talk about the relievers in a minute, but that's where the Twins and the White Sox also have that advantage for the starting pitching depth of for the series. Now, in terms of relievers, it's not looking good for the Yankees there either. We talked about the number of relievers with a 110 ERA plus, and I looked at guys with 10 or more innings, and now I'm not as confident in the other teams because I looked at their rosters, but I didn't go into the weeds of if this guy hasn't pitched, in like 2 weeks because he's in the doghouse or something like that. But I assumed that all the guys that I looked at were kind of their regular relievers. So the Twins have 7 of these relievers. Their reliever depth is really impressive, which was something I wasn't aware of until I kind of started looking at the numbers. And the White Sox have 5, which is the same as the Yankees. So in terms of the pitching, just really quickly, it looks like they, obviously, and I think a lot of people probably knew this, they don't stack up as well as both the Twins and the White Sox. So that is something to be concerned about, I think, when we're looking at it. There are other things, that we'll get to a little bit later that will be a Yankees advantage. But just in terms of the pitching, the depth is definitely less than the other teams.
Who are the Yankees 5?
It's not Holder anymore, unfortunately. I'm really sorry about that. I know it's the Queen of Stats jinx.
Not your fault.
We're not talking any specific players today. So no, I gotta know you guys. It is Chad Green, Loizaga, Sessa, Britton, and Chapman. That was 5, right? Yeah. Green, Loizaga, Sessa, Britton, Chapman are the 5.
Interesting.
So, Chapman barely. Chapman has like 9 2/3 innings, but I included him just because
they need to get him some run. He needs to pitch.
Yeah, it's crazy. The fact that he's at, and I don't even remember the last time he pitched must have been, sometime was it even this week? He didn't pitch in the first 2 games of the series, did he?
No. Yeah, I don't know.
He was in the Red Sox first extra inning game, but I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so anyways, so the Yankees, the pitching definitely could be better. And I didn't really want to look at, total aggregate pitching stats for the entire staff because it's such a short series. It's really matchup dependent. Only your best guys are going to go in this 3-game series. So, but, one thing that I did, kind of moving on, I guess, to the bats. So we talked a lot about the pitching last week. So this week I figured that we would talk about the bats and the base running and the defense. So kind of just looking at the bats, there's one thing I do want to get out there before we start talking. And these are just these things that really annoy me on Twitter. So I'm just going on my soapbox for a minute here.
Go off, Queen.
Okay, so the fact that the Yankees are basically all they do is strike out, and that they can't hit with runners in scoring position. So these are the facts, okay? The Yankees are 10th in strikeout percentage. That's 10th lowest, okay? That's in the majors. And they're actually third best in the American League, okay? So there's one.
They're the
Yankees
third
don't strike
best
out a lot.
team in
Yes.
the American League at not striking out.
At not striking out, yes.
Serving
That's
bugs.
impressive.
Okay. Yes, Gary Sanchez strikes out a lot, but that's the exception kind of on this team. The truth is that the Yankees actually have the best walk to strikeout ratio of any team in the majors. So one of the highest walk rates and one of the 10 lowest, one of the lower strikeout rates. So that is, it's a crude measure of plate discipline, but there you go. The Yankees are the best at that. The other thing with hitting with runners in scoring position. Okay. So yes, the Yankees are 10th in batting average, okay? But what we should be really focusing on is their total production, right? Just keep the line moving. Keep it going. Walks, singles, home runs, triples. Home runs are better than singles when you have runners in scoring position. Triples are better than doubles are better than singles. So if you look at total offensive production, and the stat that I like to look at is weighted runs created plus. And I think you guys we've mentioned it on this. It's basically looks at strikes, strikeouts, walks, and then all the types of hits, and it weights the hits according to basically how many runs they typically create. So a triple is better than a double is better than a single, but it's not like twice as good. You know what I mean? So hopefully people understand that. If not, they can check it out on Fangraphs, has a really good explainer. The Yankees are 4th in the majors in weighted runs created plus with runners in scoring position. They're the best in the American League. They're also 4th in OPS and 4th in on-base percentage, and the best in the American League in both of those categories with runners in scoring position. And these numbers are not just inflated by what we did last night on Tuesday night. I looked these up actually before Tuesday, so it just reaffirms that batting average isn't the only thing you should be looking at with runners in scoring position. I think. It's good, but there are a lot of other things, and the Yankees are actually good at hitting with runners in scoring position.
Mm.
Okay.
Katie, you served a full dish there. We got to digest for a minute. So the Yankees are actually pretty good, if not great, at not striking out. You mentioned Gary Sanchez as kind of the major outlier right now, and of recently, we've obviously seen a change in Gary's game. I think he's cut his strikeouts in half over these past 2 weeks since he's been figuring it out. So that's pretty impressive. That's really impressive, especially with the kind of power the Yankees lineup does provide. That's interesting. And yeah, the runners in scoring position, Katie, I respect you standing up to the guard. That's something that everybody is always going to fight because you never measure it against another team. And I'm glad that you are, because that shows that the Yankees are doing well at it. But it's just so funny to see it. And I've given up on the battle. I think every fan base just assumes their team sucks with runners in scoring position. And I was going to say it's a pandemic, but there's a literal pandemic. So maybe
it's like the easiest way to out a new fan, like a new diehard fan. Honestly, if someone constantly says our team sucks with runners in scoring position, it's almost like, okay, you've been rooting, you've been an everyday fan for about a season. Awesome. And I don't like gatekeeping fandom, but it is one of the earliest tiers of complaints you can have. It's the how's the weather of talking to strangers. Our team sucks with runners in scoring position.
I like that analogy. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, we got more of those coming, Katie. And then I think going back a little further before we continue on, we did a little dive there into the Twins, and we'll see if they're still there. They're battling with the White Sox now. Jimmy, you've been saying this, and I've actually seen Yankees Twitter be pretty good about it. There's a little bit of a Yankees twin stigma. The Yankees have dominated the Twins in recent years. This Twins team is really good. The lineup's been there for a couple years now. A lot of the names. Nelson Cruz, Miguel Sano, Kepler got off to a bad start. He's going. Buxton is doing special stuff. He's been like a bonus piece for them as they go. The pitching is really interesting, and I wonder if it was talking Twins, how they look at things, because I do think they've improved their starting pitching. Maeda has come over and he's been incredible. He's got a lot of playoff experience too. I think that does change the outlook for them. The bullpen is really interesting because that's where it turns into an on paper thing. Like Aroldis Chapman clearly hasn't gotten going this season. His stats actually look okay. But they're probably going to use him every other day, the last 3 games before the end of the season, and then assume he's Aroldis Chapman, and knock on wood, so will we. I'll still be interesting, and it stood out last playoffs because you mentioned the depth of the Twins bullpen, but the impact pieces back there. I don't know. Just going back to last year's playoff series, it just felt like they didn't have the Chapman. They didn't have the Chad Green that can come in and say this inning is over. And, the stats are there. I'm interested to see what it looks like come the actual 3-game playoff series.
Yeah, it is interesting because, a lot of these guys are not, they have probably the most well-known guy in their bullpen is Sergio Romo. And the guy is what, I'm looking at it. He's 37 right now. He's doing fantastic. He's having another fantastic season. And then you also look at, their closer, it's Taylor Rogers. It's not a guy like Aroldis Chapman. They don't have that, flame-throwing guy in the bullpen that just is like strikeout, strikeout, strikeout possibility for strikeout, 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 which is true. But you definitely have to say that they improved their starting pitching. There's no doubt about that. And they're power pitchers now, right? They're strikeout guys. That was always the thing when we played the Twins, back in the early 2000s or whatnot, 2000s. Those guys were just they were just filling up the zone. They were aggressive pitchers. They filled up the zone. They didn't walk people, but they just kind of did that. And that was a really good matchup for those Yankee power teams. But I think that, it's definitely, these are different Twins teams. So I don't think that, we can assume that, the history is going to repeat itself. So, but yeah, definitely, it's going to be interesting matchups.
Yeah, I don't believe in this Yankees team as much as I believed in last year's. So then it's me I have a pretty big wall up. And most of it is this Yankees team. We've got the death lineup back a couple times here, Katie. And they've been shut down by a pitcher who looks good on a night. Like Martin Perez looked good. He shut the Yankees down. Who pitched for the Blue Jays in Game 1? Blanking. Anderson?
No, it's the other guy, the guy who was on the IL.
Shoemaker.
Shoemaker.
Yeah.
He was the opener, right?
So I want to know with that. I want to know how they fare, either individually or as a team. I don't know how you pulled the numbers, but I still am weary of this team up against premier pitching.
Well, it was really tough to pull these numbers. I'll be honest, because I looked at the best pitching teams in the league in terms of ERA, FIP, and in terms of ERA, there's only one team that the Yankees have faced that is in the top 10 in ERA this season.
The Rays?
And that was the Rays. All the other teams that we have faced are flawed. And so I didn't really have enough time to really dig into look at individual pitchers and whatnot. But I mean, what the fact is, what kind of my intuition is that these guys, a lot of the guys that had great games against us were almost like these are their best games of their season types of things, or we're seeing guys for the first time a lot, which is a concern because, I mean, we have never seen any of the White Sox or the Twins pitchers this season, right? And we've seen them in the past, but as we know, there's a big difference between, Lucas Giolito this year and Lucas Giolito last year, even if we saw him, and I don't even know if we did. But a guy like a Jose Barrios, I looked at that. We have not seen him since 2018. Kenta Maeda never pitched against the Yankees. So it's going to be, I think that is kind of one of the big worries, is that the instinct is that we have not done as well against, pitchers that we haven't seen. Was not able to get into the numbers because it just didn't have enough time with some of the other stuff. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Yankees, probably among these three teams, are the most well-rounded offensive team in terms of hitting. The White Sox are probably their closest competitor. They're actually tied in home runs right now and basically tied in weighted runs created plus overall. The White Sox have a little bit of a higher batting average, but the Yankees have a higher OBP. So it kind of balances out there. They're both very high in slugging. The Twins, on the other hand, are, if you want to say that there's a homer or bust team, that would be the Twins. They are pretty close to the Yankees in home runs, but they have a much lower on-base percentage, a much lower batting average, and they don't really hit any doubles either. So their slugging is actually very average. They strike out a lot, have very low walk rate. So, I mean, I think the Yankees, in terms of offense, match up pretty well against the Twins. The White Sox are a concern again, though, because they are very, very similar profile to the Yankees, if we're looking at just pure offense.
That's
such a wild year. It's such a wild year. I mean, just thinking about how different the mindset game to game goes between facing these two teams. We haven't said the name Lucas Giolito yet, who's the White Sox one, and he's done some very impressive stuff the past couple years, but we also haven't, I don't know if he's pitched in the playoffs. I'd have to check that out. I don't think so. And then it's almost funny because they have Keuchel behind him, who for years kind of tormented the Yankees. And with how bad the Yankees have been against lefties this year, I mean, Keuchel seems like an absolute nightmare. That seems like a we talked about droopy shoulders a couple times. I would come into that game with droopy shoulders. So it's crazy to think about. And then at the same time, I look at the White Sox bullpen. And I mean, Alex Colomé is probably a name that a lot of baseball fans are familiar with, who's having a very nice year, but he's also known as a closer that doesn't really have the most clean innings. And then after that, a lot of these guys are deep cut baseball guys, not supposed to be a shot fired at them, but it's just honest. So I don't know. I mean, it all spins back to kind of the generic 2020. Everyone's saying like, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. It's hard to even wrap your mind around.
Yeah, this is definitely the hardest season that I've had in terms of trying to compare teams, simply because there are no comparisons to make because of the stratified schedules. I mean, you're only playing a handful of teams. Like I said, I looked at the best pitching teams. We have only faced one team that ranks in the top 10 in ERA this season. So how do you compare?
It's really hard. Like, there's a stat came out the other day that says Jacob deGrom, 100% of his games have come against top 60 offenses, while in the Central, all the great pitchers, Bauer, Bieber,
right?
I mean, pitchers. They haven't faced good offenses. Well, it's like chicken or the egg. Like, Are there so many good pitchers in the Central because the offenses are weak, or the offense is weak because there's so many good pitchers? But the Yankees have not faced a lot of 1s and 2s pitchers. They just haven't seen good pitching, and I think that scares me a lot going into the postseason and having to see good pitching, 1 or 2 times, because during the regular season, like if we were to face Bieber, Giolito, Maeda, any of these stud pitchers in the regular season game right now, I would on the pregame show say, expect us to look pretty bad the first time through. Expect us to get carved up the first time through the lineup because we haven't seen Bieber yet. We haven't seen Maeda yet. And now we're going to do that in a postseason game. And, then a fresh bullpen arm. So that scares me a lot with this team. They've made 2 rookies that they had never seen before and didn't have a full scouting report. Ian Anderson, Keegan Aiken, and there's actually Tanner Houck. There's like 3 now. Look really good because I think this is a Yankees team that heavily relies on scouting reports and all that.
I mean, Ian Anderson. I mean, to be fair though, Ian Anderson has turned out to be really good.
Yeah. But he hit him. And then they gave.
I mean, you
Tanner
can't get
Houck
no hit.
Had like a 1 hitter as well. Like I'm not saying the Yankees have made these pitchers look good. They made them look really, really, really good.
They made them look better than they probably were. Yeah.
So it's really scary to me that they haven't seen any of these good pitchers yet.
Ian Anderson also goes back about a lineup and a half ago. I think that Yankees Braves lineup that wasn't really the Yankees. So. It's going to be interesting, and I bet a lot of teams are saying the same thing. I mean, a lot of lineups don't look good the first time through against good pitching, but it is an unknown. And Katie Sharp, I'll bring it, to our wide world of sports. This whole conversation feels like a college football playoff conversation. It feels like will a Big Ten defense hold up against an SEC offense, or Big 12 passing game versus the SEC defense? And that's what it really feels like. It's like, okay, this Yankees offense hadn't seen really a lot of elite pitching. Will it hold up? But I think a lot of those pitchers haven't seen an offense like the Yankees. So it's kind of, what's the push come to shove?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what I was trying to say is also, I mean, the Yankees have a when they're at their best, they probably have the best offense, at least in the American League, right up there with the Dodgers in terms of the majors. And we've seen it. I mean, we know what this offense can do when they're at their best. And like I said, in the Central, I mean, literally the Indians and Reds are on pace to be 2 of the 9 worst teams ever to make the playoffs in terms of offensive production. If you look at OPS plus, they would be 2 of the 9 worst ever to make the playoffs. So that, and those are both teams happen to be in the Central, and both teams, happen to be, facing all the same pitchers there. So yeah, so it is the chicken and the egg. And I think that this, like I said, I think, this postseason is going to be like none other that we've seen before for many reasons. And one of them is that, these teams just have not played the same, overlapping schedules.
Katie, you saying best lineup in the AL made both of us feel pretty good. So thank you for that. And it is something we've gotten away from Yankee fans just because of injuries and thinking about everything. I've got a non-stat question for you, Katie, and just an opinion because I value your opinion. How would you do the lineup? Are you a DJ Judge, Voit, Stanton?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the righty lefty thing. Just don't give me that, okay? Don't give me the righty lefty thing. Yes. I want my best players, all my best players at the top of the lineup. So yeah, I mean, I think you have to go. You start off with DJ Judge, Voit, Stanton. I really want Clint to be higher, so I really want Clint up there. I'd like to have, and let's go down to the bottom. I think Gio is actually a good guy at the bottom of the lineup to turn it over, because you don't want to get stuck there. And then who do we got? We got Hicks left. Put him 6th. And who am I forgetting?
Glaby.
Like, I'm putting Gary 8th, but
Glaber.
Oh, Glaber. Glaber 7th. He loves the 7th spot. Look at his splits. Loves the lower part of the lineup. That's my lineup.
I love it.
There we go.
I love it.
Put Hicks 9.
You could do Hicks 9, Geo 9.
They never.
Yeah. Either one.
They'd never do
Hicks. They love Hicks up.
Did you see Hicks' quote the other day? He said, like, yeah, I'm starting to feel better. I'm like, I didn't know you weren't feeling good.
It's just going around, man. Foot stuff, Hicks stuff. He his stat line blows my mind every day. He's another double and a homer away from having like a really nice season.
I mean, the thing is, like, half of his hits are extra bases.
Yeah.
We know that, and we know that he has one of the highest walk rates in the majors. So don't make outs and make your hits count. I think that's a good player.
But he's not that good. It's you still need so much more. He doesn't even have an 800 OPS.
I know. I mean, well, that's dragging him down for sure, but
big night tonight, and he's there. Hit a homer.
Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, I don't want Hicks 3-hole. They're going to put him 3-hole though.
I think 5. Yeah. I think that's the best we can.
Oh, they won't put him 3. We've seen that, but they'll do like 5.
I think 5,
which is silly. I mean, they're going to run into righty pitchers, right? Keuchel is the only, like, if they get the White Sox in game 2, the Twins, it's all righties.
Yep, Twins and White Sox are basically. I mean, Twins are all righties. The White Sox are, except for Keuchel, right? Rich Hill is on the Twins.
Yeah,
I don't see him. I wouldn't see him pitching in a 3-game series, though. I don't think they would. I think they'd put Pineda ahead of him.
You said you had some base running stuff, Katie, as well. Defense and base running. DJ has been taking the extra base like a crazy person. And every time he successfully grabs the extra base, it actually changes the rest of the inning. So it's scary because, like, he's not fast. And he's like, every time he takes it, the extra base, he's safe by, like, you go to replay and you're like, whoa, okay, I guess he was safe. Wow. So are the Yankees good at base running?
Yeah, that's I wanted to get to that because I think that is definitely one of the advantages that they have over both the Twins and the White Sox. The Yankees are actually probably, you can call them a top 5 base running team if you look at every aspect of base running. That's taking the extra base, that's advancing on outs, that's stolen bases, obviously, it's avoiding ground double plays. So Fangraphs has, I think we talked about this maybe once or twice before, they have a statistic called base running, their base running metric. And basically what it does is it aggregates all of those things, tries to put it onto a scale of, how many runs you produce or lose on the bases. And the Yankees, in that metric, they rank 4th in the entire major leagues. And the Twins and the White Sox are both below average. The Twins are 16th and the White Sox are 22nd in that metric. So this is an all-encompassing base running metric. And basically what the Yankees do, I kind of looked at it, is they just don't make mistakes and they take advantage of other teams' mistakes and advance on outs. So they actually have the 8th fewest outs on bases. So outs on a base is like making an out while a base running play, not stealing or anything like that. It's, trying to advance on a sac fly or trying to advance on a fly ball and you get thrown out.
Everything that came to my mind was like a stolen base. And that one terrible time Tyro advanced, but he was safe because they dropped the ball. So
great.
Okay.
And it's like trying to take that extra, it's like getting thrown out at home, things like that. The Yankees are one of the best teams at that. Whereas if you look at Minnesota, they actually have the 6th most outs on bases. So there's an advantage there. And in terms of taking advantage of other teams' mistakes and advancing on outs, this I think is a really underrated part of the Yankees. And that's like wild pitches, pass balls, taking the base then, fly balls, taking an extra base on an out like that or on a ground ball. The Yankees have the most in the major leagues, what's called bases taken. You can find that stat on Baseball Reference. They have 70. So they lead the majors. Whereas if you look at Minnesota and the White Sox are actually just slightly above average. They have about 50 each. But that's a significant advantage that the Yankees can take care of, that the Yankees can have in matching up against those teams. Because it's gonna, in the playoffs, we know this. It's the little things that matter, right? It's not making the stupid mistakes. It's not making those, toot blands, the base running plays, where you get thrown out, making the third out, the out at third base. So I think that, the Yankees, that's, in terms of base running, they definitely have an advantage, and that could be the difference in a playoff game for sure.
I actually love that the biggest positive is that they just don't have a lot of negatives. It's not like they're like running like crazy, taking tons of risks. I do think they've upped a little bit, and they are taking the extra base with a lot of risk lately. But you're right. Like they're not a bad base running team. They don't run into a ton of outs. So they're pretty smart that way. And I think that's because they operate with an abundance of caution because they have so many big poppers. And it's like, I'll probably hit a home run. So just stay still.
Exactly. And they don't need to be, extra aggressive and take that extra base. They're basically average in terms of the percentage of taking extra bases. And like you said, it has been increasing in the past few weeks because I remember looking at it a couple weeks ago and they were below average. But it's the same as like the Twins and the White Sox are both the same type, they're average in taking the extra base. And it's because they have similar profiles offensively to the Yankees, where they know they have that big bopper. They can, bring guys home with one swing. But in terms of the other things, not making mistakes and being smart on the base pass and making good base running plays, Yankees definitely have an advantage over the other teams.
Yeah, and it's another thing that I think you could put on, I won't say bad fan bingo, but kind of like, our team makes too many outs on the bases. Like, yeah, every team does. It's kind of when does it happen and what does it look like? And again, comparing it to other teams. But you're right. And I think that's why Jim and I are both kind of thinking in an enlightened way. Like, your recent images of Yankees running the bases are DJ taking an extra base or two and getting in there. Hicks has been running like a man possessed, whether it was stealing bases or just taking extra bases. Guardy's always been good, and the most recent one is Judge, who was scary when he first started running. But his last couple games, he's been flying around, scoring on doubles and all of that. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And Jimmy also said this at the start of it. And like DJ LeMahieu last night, that play where he did sneak into third base and his foot just got in there. If he didn't go for that base, it would have been first and second. There's a ground ball to the right side. It just goes by Vlad Guerrero Jr. because the infield was in. And again, if you take that back, and Cone was on this on the broadcast, that's a potential double play ball. That's potentially, first to short, back to first. So instead it goes down as a 2 RBI single. So when you say the little things in the playoffs, yeah, I mean, that changes a game. That in theory, that play went from 2 RBI single instead of double play ball.
Yep, exactly. And the Yankees are also, contrary to popular belief, are actually one of the best teams at avoiding double plays. They rank 4th in that stat that's on Fangraphs. And then that takes into consideration the opportunities that they get, that teams get, and then, whether you actually hit into the double play. So the Yankees are a good base running team all around.
Why is that, Katie? Is that a mix of, the Yankees do have a couple guys that get down the line well, Hicks, although he does have a few double plays this year. Does it tie into being a high walk team? Like, because I know what I think a lot of people are thinking, if Gary hits a ground ball with a runner on base, you pretty much chalk it up to a double play. Stanton, same thing. Voit. It seems like there are a lot of those guys in the Yankees lineup, but it doesn't translate that way.
I think it's just in terms of opportunities. I think that, the Yankees, they have, the thing is they do have a lot of opportunities to get grounded to these double plays, right? Because they're going to be on base probably more than most teams. And they're going to have multiple players on base more than most teams because, as we mentioned, they're a really good offensive team. But if you look at kind of the percentages and the weights of the situation, they've maximized their opportunities of not grounding into that double play. So I think it's really just important to remember the context there because you kind of look at it and it seems like every time that they're up there they ground into this double play, but in reality, think about how many times they walk to load the bases, that type of thing when it's a first and second, so I think that the Yankees, like you said, that the high walk rate does help a lot because once, if they walk, there's a guy in first and they, Aaron Hicks is up, he's going to walk, and then it's first and second. And it's a less of a double play opportunity. So, so that's kind of, I don't have a good explanation for it. But I think it also goes back to the fact that they are a smart base running team. These guys, they know how to slide.
There's only one Yankee, Jake and BBD, that has over 100 at-bats and has not grounded into a double play this season. Name that Yankee.
100 at-bats, huh?
Yeah, over 100 at-bats has not grounded into a double play. There's only one Yankee that has over 49 at-bats and has not grounded into a double play.
What's the question again?
Gio?
No, Gio has grounded into 4 double plays.
49 plus at bats or 100 plus at bats?
Guy falls in both categories.
With no double plays?
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing. I don't know. Tyler Wade.
Mike Ford or something.
Tyler Wade is 1, grounded into 1.
It's going to be somebody like Mike Ford.
Mike Ford has grounded into 4. Brett Gardner has 125 at-bats with 0 grounded into double plays.
Adds up.
The only other people that have at-bats and haven't grounded in double plays are Kratz, Mercer, Tyro, and Higgy.
That's a good one.
It's fast. Did you have stuff on defense as well, Katie?
I did. I had a little bit on defense. Unfortunately, it's not as positive as what we've been talking about so far. The Yankees are not really good on defense this year. And one of the things, that really concerns me is the mistakes. And I don't normally like to look at errors because it doesn't take into account the entire picture of, it's very subjective, obviously. But when I saw this stat and it just really stood out to me. And what it does, it just makes me think about mistakes. And we mentioned that before with the base running. Base running with the Yankees, they don't make a lot of mistakes. Base running, the defense with the Yankees, that's been a problem. And that's kind of what I think errors represent, are just mistakes. Doesn't necessarily mean that the Yankees have bad fielders, although we'll see that the other metrics agree. But I saw this stat on Twitter that in the last 17 games, the Yankees have 19 errors, that's terrible. And just to even put that into more context, the Twins have 18 errors the entire season. So like I said, errors are not the be all and end all of defense, but what they do represent, I think, here are mistakes, whether it's mental, physical, whatever. And those are things that really need to be eliminated in the playoffs, and the things that can make a difference in the playoffs. And just overall, the Yankees have the 3rd most errors in the majors, behind 2 teams you do not want to be mentioned with, the Pirates and the Red Sox. So, like I said, the errors, that was a shocking stat for me. Very concerning. but the other metrics also back it up. So we've looked at defensive runs saved. We've mentioned this before. It's on Fangraphs. You can find it. They are 15th in defensive runs saved, so basically average. But the White Sox and Twins are both very good defensive teams. They rank 7th and 8th in defensive runs saved. So just comparing to our competition. And then StatCast also has their own defensive metric called outs above average. And that works a little bit differently. We know it kind of calculates the probability of a ball being caught based on historical balls there. It's a little bit more sophisticated. The Yankees are 24th in outs above average this season. The White Sox are 15th and the Twins are 3rd. So bottom line is the Yankees are a much worse defensive team than both the White Sox and the Twins, which is something that, like I said, that could come back to bite them in the end because defense is just as important as offense.
That's pretty crazy.
Not good. Tighten it up a little bit. Tighten it up, Brennan. You're having a bad day. Yeah. And kind of like you're saying, Katie, the mistakes you can't, in a playoff time, that is just blood in the water. Any extra at bats or outs in an inning, especially, and that almost spins back to those lineups. I mean, the Twins and White Sox can both hit, and if you give extra at bats to any of those guys, any of the guys that hit in the top 7, 8 in those lineups are dangerous hitters. So that's I don't know. You hope playoff time comes in and they can kick in and none of the mental stuff, but it's scary. It's clearly not their strength. And on the other side of it, whichever team we do face, don't hit it to center field because Buxton or Robert will catch it.
There's 3 Yankees that have played over 100 innings and have not recorded an error.
Ooh.
Got any guesses?
100 innings.
The catchers count?
100 innings.
Innings, yeah.
Higgy might not.
Higgy has an error.
Oh, he does?
But he hasn't caught 100 innings.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Gary, we know, has many errors.
Does Judge have an error this year?
He does not, Jake. That is 150 innings, 0 errors. Jake has a point on the board. BBD, do you have a guess?
I'd probably guess Hicks. I feel like I remember a Gardner error, and it's just harder to get errors in the outfield. So
Hicks has 2 errors.
Rats.
349 innings. Katie, do you have a
remember? Guess? Well, I remember one Frazier error. I think he would have been my guess.
He has one.
One, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have an error.
Talkman has 0 errors. Gets another point. There's one other person that has played 313 innings, has a 100 fielding percentage.
Voit?
No, Voit has 2 errors. Gio Urshela has not made an error yet.
Really?
Congratulations.
I think
He's turned 10 double plays.
He might have a couple friendly scorer ones. And
no?
I think he might have got a couple.
There's
couple friendly scores.
0 friendly scores.
Good for you, Gio.
Yeah,
he's good.
Gio like Judge Talkman.
We like him.
Love Gio. Yep,
he's fun.
All right, so pitching, Yanks are decent. They're not terrible. They're not amazing going into the postseason comparatively to postseason pitchers. Base running, Yanks are really good. Mostly they don't run into outs. They're very smart. And defense has oddly been not great. Got to pick it up.
Yeah.
Yep. No mistakes.
Anything else? I think that's great. Thank you.
So I do actually have a stat of the week if we want to.
Sharpest stat.
Yeah.
We want to take a minute here. It's a trivia question. You guys love. I know you guys love. We all love trivia questions here. Okay.
Yes.
So, Fangraphs, has basically they have a metric I mentioned before for base running, right? So that's also they do have that for individual players. Then they have their offensive and defensive sort of WAR components, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those three components on Fangraphs. There is one Yankee with I think it's like 50 or 60 plate appearances that has a positive base running, offensive WAR, and defensive WAR.
Higgy.
He doesn't have enough plate appearances.
It's a good guess. It was a good guess.
But it does include guys like Judge and Stanton and, you know, those types of guys. But yeah, that's what.
So basically positive at every aspect.
So
Clint.
you're 5-tool player.
Clint's a really good guess.
Is it Clint?
It is Clint Frazier,
Clint's been great.
your Yankee MVP. No. Your Yankee 5-tool player. And if you had told me that would be true at the beginning of the season, I probably would have thought that you were on some sort of drugs or something. Because no one would have ever imagined that coming from Clint. So I think that's kind of just sums up basically his entire season. And that this guy has become what we thought he was when he was a prospect, a terrific all-around player, a great athlete, and a terrific all-around baseball player.
Good for him. Good for Cashman for accidentally holding on to him. And yeah, man, the press conference stuff has been great too. And yeah, I mean, pretty cool that we can, like, Clint is now a part of the future of the Yankees, which, you know, I think a lot of people could have lost bets on, including probably all four of us here today. So
We got a little playoff roster drop. I know we just playoff lineup. I know we just talked lineups.
Ooh, yeah.
They have Hicks 6th.
Oh, they did move him down there. Okay.
That's what I said 6 or I said 7, didn't I?
6th. They have
Oh,
Gio
I said
7.
6, yeah.
They have Gio 7, Gary 8, and Clint 9 though.
I don't. No, dude. Get me Clint. I want Clint 5-hole. I mean,
Wow.
get me Clint up as far as possible.
Yeah.
So
DJ Judge,
Oh, well.
Stanton, Voit is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's what we're gonna have.
God, split up Judge and Stanton. I don't know.
I mean, if you split them up, you're gonna split them up with Voit, and it's the same shit.
yeah.
It's a little different.
If Stan's hitting, everyone's hitting, it's fine.
Go win. Yeah. Go win.
All right, thank you guys.
Good
very much
lineup.
for tuning in. Appreciate you. Thank you, Katie, very much for dropping some knowledge on the
Clean.
listeners.
You got
Hope
it.
you guys have a fantastic day. We'll see you tomorrow for the series recap against the Blue Jays. Go Yanks. Tell them, Grams.
Go Yankees.